Welcome to the Create the Life You Want podcast, where we break down the journey of people just like you going from dream to ownership in business acquisitions, franchises, and startups. I'm your host, Jeremy Ames. Today's episode is brought to you ad-free by Gwinnett Financial. Gwinnett is America's leading company helping aspiring entrepreneurs use retirement funds to buy or start businesses. If you're committed to buying or starting a business, you can find out more about your funding options by going to www.gwinnetfinancial.com. That's Guidant financial.com. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Create the Life You Want podcast. Today, I'm joined by Scott Henrichsen, and he has an interesting story. He's now a multiple business owner in the sports and sports training industry. And Scott got a little taste of this in the corporate world, working for various sports leagues. And we're going to hear a little bit about that and how he transitioned from that corporate job into what he's doing today. So Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So Scott, why don't we start with you telling us, did you always know you wanted to be a business owner? Was this something that just popped up later in life, or were there seeds planted for this earlier?
Yeah, this is something that I've always wanted to do. As far as being a business owner and working for myself, just never really, I guess, took the leap of faith until later in life for lots of reasons that I just wanted to do. Before this, I'd owned a couple of smaller companies that I kind of had just started on my own franchises, but they were just some other small things, and so I got a taste of it. And there's some things that happened in my corporate life that I just decided I was done with that and wanted to be.
Got it. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did before you became a business owner? What was the pre-path?
Yeah, I worked in professional and minor league sports. I've worked in the NHL. I've worked in minor league baseball. I've worked for the NBA. I even worked for a league called World Team Tennis. But did everything from sales to operations to team president for a hockey team. But that was what I did before I decided to, kind of be done with it and just go out on my own.
Well, that sounds kind of like a glamorous corporate life. Was that your experience, or just looks good on a business card? But
it was pretty cool. I mean, there were opportunities that I would have never had if I hadn't done it. I've probably been to 3 or 4 Super Bowl, and we took guests and clients to some of the Super Bowl things I would have never done in my life if I hadn't worked in professional sports. But it's not, I talk to a lot of people and they're like, "Oh, cool, did you go throw the football on the field with such and such quarterback?" And I'm like, no, I was making sales calls. So it sounds glamorous at the same time. It's just like any other job. You go to work, you try to either make more money or save money so that there's profit at the end of the day.
Yeah. And how many years did you do that for?
Oh, goodness. Probably about 20 years I was in the industry.
Okay, so 20 years in the industry.
Yep.
It sounds like you had this inside of you to become a business owner at some point. Was there any particular thing that happened earlier for you that really triggered that, or just this feeling that you always wanted to have more control? Or
yeah, I think a little bit of both. I remember in my college days thinking about different ways that I could start businesses or things that I could improve on it and try to make a go of it on my own. But again, as I mentioned a little while ago, I was kind of afraid, I guess, to take that leap of faith, both financially and just, having a young college, just married, starting a family, needed to have some sort of stability, I guess, which comes from most of the time in the corporate world. There's also that there's not stability sometimes. I went through a couple of different times where I was let go from because of restructuring, because in some instances I was making too much money doing what I was doing. I was successful, so I was making money, and they decided they could go a little bit less expensive route, find someone who didn't have as much experience that they thought could continue to do the same things that I was doing. So there's both that inner drive that I've always had, but also some external forces that I had no control over that kind of led me to where I am. And at some point, you get to an age where they're going to look at you. It's got a certain amount of money, but we can pay the guy that's fresh out of college that maybe doesn't have the same experience less money and maybe get the same thing from them. I don't know. And I feel like I was being overlooked. So I just got fed up with that process and said, you know what, I'm done. Let's go start something on our own.
Interesting. So for you, it was less about overcoming the fear and more about getting so frustrated with you capping out in your ability to earn in advance that you felt like you had to take control of it in order to continue to grow.
Yeah, that's a good synopsis. Yeah. It got to the point where I wasn't afraid anymore, that I was ready to jump in.
So it sounds like one of the big draws to going into corporate America was the stability, and then you found through a couple of hard experiences that stability was shaky at best. Can you give us any details about those and how it impacted you and when in your career?
I was top salesperson, producing revenue numbers above anybody else. And it, got to the point literally right before Christmas. We just had our third child. He was 6 months old. Here comes Christmas. And they just decide they cut me because they could keep the other people. They'd gotten to the point where they were very successful. And, at the point where they're just like, well, we're going to make some restructuring and we're going to take the top and we're going to cut that off because we're going to save this much money. And we feel like we can maintain without that. And so that was one experience. Another experience was where I had come into a situation where they asked me to help get the organization to a point where the current ownership could sell off what he was looking to sell. And I came in and did exactly that. My contract ran out a year later, and the new owner again said, "You're making too much money for what I can afford, so we need to."
And so for you, what was it that finally pushed you over the edge, Scott? What was the breaking point at which point the frustration overcame the fears and you started to move forward with the idea of becoming a business owner?
I think for me, being 50 plus years old, and I had to go back to an hourly job where I had to clock in and clock out, and I was being paid what I had made years before because I was being considered for some of the upper level jobs that I felt like I should be. That was really it. When I had to start clocking in and clocking out again, which I hadn't done for years, and being paid an hourly wage, I said that I'm going to take a lesser amount than what I've usually been making. I'm going to do that for myself. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not getting rich doing what I'm doing now. So, and my wife. My wife and I do it together, and we do it for us. We do it for our family. Like we can leave somewhat of a legacy in what we're doing now. Whereas before, I was leaving someone else's legacy. I was helping them. Now here I have the chance to leave our own and lay some foundation maybe for children someday if they want. And if they don't want, what we're doing, I think, is we're doing good things for the community we live in.
Yeah. And you're in Georgia, correct?
Yes, just north of Atlanta.
North of Atlanta. Okay. So tell us a little bit about so you get to this point where you're in a job, you're clocking in and out, and you say, I'm done. Then what? Like, how do you go from I'm done to I'm doing something else?
Well, I guess I just started looking around at different opportunities. Like I said, I've always had that bug inside of me to do my own thing. That's why I chose the route that I did of being on the business side of sports. I've always loved baseball. Baseball's been a love of mine, and so came across this franchise opportunity and vetted it out the best I could. Decided to move forward with it. At the same time, COVID hit, and everybody was moving out of retail space and into warehouse space because they didn't need to have the retail space anymore because everybody was buying things online. And so there goes into the warehouse space, which is exactly what I was looking for. And so that turned into So I looked at another franchise opportunity and decided to buy into that one while I was already a franchise owner. At least it paid the franchise first one. Got that one up and going for almost a year, 14 months before the other one got going. So, I guess, waiting to find the facility, about this other opportunity, and decided.
Yeah. So when you were out there researching, did you pretty quickly decide that you wanted to do a franchise, or did you just happen to come across a franchise option that checked the boxes? Like, walk us through your mentality when you go out to search. What are you even looking for?
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know what I was looking for. In the end, um, there are obvious anybody that's looked into franchising. There's obvious advantages. Advantages for me was I didn't have to come up with a lot of the systems, some of the marketing. Those were plug and play. Like they were there, they were ready to go. As soon as I signed on the dotted line, things started happening. Whereas if it wasn't the franchise route, I would have had to go through every one of those steps myself. And I think I'm a smart enough person, but I don't know all that stuff. Like I don't know how to make my I don't know how to do SEO and get myself to be on the top of the Google searches, and I don't know how to come up with CRM databases that track the information that need to be tracked when we're obtaining new customers. And so, like I say, there's a lot of advantages that come along. There's some disadvantages too, because a lot of my income goes away every month.
And so I'm reading from your story that you didn't know what you were looking for. Sounds like you had some vague ideas about things related to sports or recreation,
Yeah.
and you pretty quickly aligned around the franchise idea. Is that fair to say?
That's fair. Yeah, because like I say, I probably wouldn't have done either one of these things if I had tried to do them on my own.
Okay, so how did you find the franchises?
I think for the, I mean, do you want me to say the name of the franchises?
Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah.
Baseball and Softball Academy is one of them, and that's the first one I signed up with. I don't remember how I came across them. Probably just from things that may have come across my social media pages, or because I'm in that industry, right? They target people that are in certain industries, so that may have helped how I came across that. But like I say, I reached out to them. I just started asking some questions. I had some phone calls. Decided to go take an exploratory day at their corporate office. Liked what I heard. Decided to sign on, and then and then the wait. The other one, I was introduced to it through a business or a franchise coach, I guess is what they're called, or a consultant or something. He presented several different ideas based on what I told him my likes were and what I was looking for, and narrowed it down to 2 or 3, and just decided that one school is what we signed on with and decided to go with.
Yeah. And so you did one where you sort of went to the franchisor directly, and one where you worked through a franchise coach. So tell us about how those processes were different.
Not a lot different, really, other than I had to work with the franchise coach in that exploratory stage where we were talking once or twice a week on what were my likes, what did I want to get out of it, and then it took a little bit longer, I guess, to get to the point where I talked to the franchise corporate office myself. To me, it was just really the difference, in my opinion, is just timing. One took a little bit longer to get to the conversation with the corporate office than the other one did.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Scott, because it's unique that someone has gone down both paths of working with a franchise consultant and going directly to a franchisor. So what would you recommend to somebody based on the processes that you went through with both of those? And did you see advantage in working with a coach of helping you get to something that was a better fit, or 6 of 1?
Yeah, that's a great question. And here's what I would say to that is in my wife and I's married life, we purchased 3 houses. The realtor, right, is the one that shows you the house and tells you what the nice things about it. But every single one of the houses that we've purchased, we found for ourselves. And the realtor was just kind of there to complete the transaction, right? So I looked at franchising really, for me, the same way. I found something that even with the franchise coach, which was a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because they presented several different ideas. But in the end, I looked at all those ideas that he had presented to me, and I went back to him and said, this is the one we want to move forward with. Just like out of all the houses, none of them are the ones we bought. We found the house and said, this is one we want to go look at. And then we bought it, and they made their commission on it, but they didn't really do much to help us find it, right? And so that's kind of the way I look at this. And maybe that's just my personality is a doer. Let's go get things done. Let's not wait around for somebody else to bring something to me. Even the building that I ultimately have my real estate agency looking for a property for me. Well, who found the building? I did. I found it. They didn't even have it on their radar. I took it to them, and then they presented, to the landlord, I guess, who presented it to the owner, and that's how that deal got. And I brought it to them.
Got it. So even with British Swim School, that was a franchise that you had identified. It wasn't one that came through the filter of the franchise coach.
That's sort of fair. I knew about British Swim School because there was another one in the area that was selling, but it also was one that came through the franchise coach. It came up in the process, and so I guess I can't say I took British Swim School to him, but when it was brought to me, I already knew about it and had done some looking into it.
Got it. So tell us about the looking in you did to these 2 different franchises. What was the process you used, and how did you figure out, I think this is going to be a good fit for us?
Well, mostly, you got to follow the rules, which is you sign the FTD, give you some information, and it's a bookload of paperwork that you get to look at and read through, and there's some financials in there. And that was really my research. That was my initial looking into it, checking websites, looking around the country, kind of seeing where these other franchises were, trying to understand. Well, a lot of it just boiled down to a gut feeling of, could we make a go at this? Do we feel comfortable that we can at least pay the bill to sign on this franchise? And that was it. And now, once that process started, I then reached out to some franchise owners around the country and had what I would call validation calls, and just tried to get as much information as I could that they were willing to share with me, just by having phone conversations with different people around the country. I didn't really talk to anybody in the local market. I guess I was trying to protect the fact that I was coming into the market where there already were some other franchises, and not kind of make them mad until I was here. They got upset a little bit that I was infringing a little bit the area that maybe they were pulling from. But so I talked to different franchise owners around the country from both British Swim School and from DBET.
Yeah. What did you learn from those validation calls? And can you give us an example of at least one thing you took from one of those that was just really impactful, either in changing your perspective or helping you think about what was going to be the right fit?
Yeah, those validation calls were good. Did they help me make a decision? Either way, I think I had already made my decision that I was going to move forward with it unless I heard something really, really odd or really strange. And I didn't hear those things. Of course, the people that you're given is people to potentially talk to, are people that have probably been successful in the business, and that's why they're on a list of people that the corporate office says, hey, reach out to these people. So I guess I went into those calls with just a pre-notion that I was going to sign up for the franchise. Honestly, Jeremy, I've done a lot of those validation calls for British Swim School since being a franchise owner, and I try to be upfront and honest. Well, I don't try to be. I am upfront and honest as I can with the people when they ask the questions, because there are some stumbling blocks that come along with it, but there's also some really good things that come along with it. So I want to make sure they know, because maybe I didn't know a couple of stumbling blocks beforehand. And if I were to go back and do it again, I would know maybe some better questions to ask, both on the corporate level, maybe even on some of the validation calls.
Oh, well, let's talk about that, because this whole podcast is for people who are earlier in the stage. So going back now, if you were doing the validation calls again, what would you do differently and why?
I guess I would ask some more specific questions. Like, with British Swim School, we don't some owners do, but we don't. My wife and I don't own our pool, so we use other underutilized, whether that's a fitness center, a retirement home. Some people, believe it or not, church pool. So whatever, there's pools out there that just are underutilized. And our business model is that we teach our lessons. And so I guess I would have asked, how hard really is it to find a pool? Because in my mind, as a business person, if I go to a hotel, right, that has a pool that's just sitting there because no one's using it or hardly ever using it, and I present to them that, hey, I want to come in on Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and I want to rent pool space, and I want to teach swimming lessons. And all we're going to do is we're going to come in the back door, and we're going to teach the lessons, and they're going to go out the back door, and we're not going to interrupt your business whatsoever. We're going to give you something. And my gut feeling, having never worked in the industry, is general managers of hotels would probably be bonused on an annual basis based on the amount of income they bring in. I don't know. But I would assume that there's something built into their agreement that if you get such and such revenue, you get such and such bonus. Well, here I am coming to you and saying, I want to give you money. Let me teach lessons in a pool that you're not using. But it was very difficult. I couldn't get one hotel to bite off on it and decide to join us. So you're sold on the concept of, I wouldn't say you're sold. The concept is that there's pools in your territory that are not being used. It's just a matter of convincing. We probably still wouldn't have taught a single lesson in 2 years because I couldn't get anybody else to see how this would benefit them, having a pool that's not being used and me wanting to give you money to be in.
Yeah. Anything else as you think about the validation calls?
Not really. I mean, just honest conversation really is. I try to, like, when I'm doing the calls, they always have a list of questions like, when did you get out? When did you start making money? How many students did you have to get to? Blah, 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 right? And those are all good questions. So for me, what I want to get out of it is kind of what's their tone? Do they seem happy doing what they're doing? Want to do something good in the community? Teaching swimming lessons is a skill. It's something that everybody really should know how to do in case they fell into a body of water. They should know how to survive. They should know how to get on their back. They should know how to call for help. They should know these things because drowning is an unfortunate, very high cause of death for children and adults, right? And and I go home, or I at the end of the night, I tell people this all the time, that I have a warm heart because we taught hundreds of lessons each week to people that are trying to either get their kids safe in the water or get themselves safe in the water. So it's not for us. It's not about making money. Yeah, we need to make money. We need to pay our bills, but kind of did that already in my career.
Well, I'm curious, as somebody who's done a lot of these validation calls, I'm guessing you get off these calls and you think to yourself, oh, this person's going to be super successful in this, or oh man, this person's going to struggle. What is it about the ones that you feel really confident about? What is it that they are doing differently that you just buy into, hey, I believe that person's going to do well?
So this is just me, right? This is just my opinion. Um, I I tell people this all the time that if I was a absentee owner in this business or in either business, I don't think I'd be successful. There's a little bit of cost difference between these two franchises. One costs more than the other to get it going. A particular franchise gave me this analogy. They said, are you going to go buy yourself a Ferrari, right? And then take the keys and turn it over to somebody else and say, here, go drive my Ferrari. You can take it every day. It's all yours. Drive it however you want. It's yours to do whatever you want with it. And that's kind of the way I feel about our franchise. Our business is if I turned it over to somebody else, I don't think it would get done the way, for sure, the way that my wife and I wanted it done. Not to say that that can't be done, but for us and our personality, we could never be absentee owners. So we want to be there every day, every minute, handling every problem. No. And so we've hired some good people that are handling some of those things for us. But if I only put in on this weekly, month, or whatever, I don't think we'd be in the situation we are today. And the last 2 years with the swim school and where our baseball and softball franchise facility is right now. So when I hear somebody on these validation calls talk about how they're going to be involved, if I'm just buying it for an investment purpose, that to me is the trigger on whether this person is going to be successful or not. And again, I'm not saying that they can't just buy into these franchises and use them as investment purposes. That I'm sure that works for some people, but it wouldn't work for me.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm guessing it's the DBAT facility that cost a lot more to get off the ground, because we used to have one here locally, and there's a lot of equipment that goes into building out those spaces.
Yeah, it is the one that costs more, for sure.
Yeah. So were you planning to do two? Like how obviously you thought about wanting to go down this path of being a business owner, and then all of a sudden you got yourself in two different things that are going to require franchise fees and build outs and other things. So how did you even figure out how to put that all together in terms of what it was going to cost and how you were going to make sure you had the bandwidth and the cash to get it to a place of profitability?
Yeah. So like I think I mentioned, I had signed on as a franchise owner, bought a territory with DBAT. And then the process of finding a facility was just taking too long for me. And so I got antsy, I got bored, for whatever reason, this coach, this consultant connected, and that's when we started talking. So that was a very quick onboarding because I don't have to have my own facility. Very little when it comes to the financial aspect of it. I still don't know that we're going to be able to. We obviously got them started, so at least we're there. We went the route of doing, we went through the ROBS program, using my retirement funds to invest in myself rather than invest in the market. I'm investing in me and my wife and the businesses that we run. And so, we took a risk and pulled out my retirement and used a portion of that to get both of these businesses started.
Got it. And how did you think about that risk? How did you get comfortable with that? I think some people would say using your retirement funds is crazy. That's partly why I'm asking.
I think I got comfortable with it because it was the only route we were going to be able to do it. I had tried some traditional funding banks that just wasn't going anywhere. And I talked to some folks from Guidance, and they kind of answered my questions about what I felt. I don't believe in me. I believe that I'm going to be successful. So why not invest in yourself? And so that's what I did. I took out the investments from, that we had, and hopefully this works. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see when the end comes. I decide to get out. I hope I at least have what I started with, if not more, because that's the whole point of investing, is to watch it grow. And I would hope that when we decide to get out, that the investment that we put in has grown at least as much as it would have.
Got it. And so you said you used a portion. So how did you think about making sure that you not only had enough cash to get the business off the ground, but how did you think about the timeline to profitability and how you would manage that?
I didn't think about it. I didn't. I mean, I was at a crossroads really of either I'm going to do this or I'm not. And so the thing was, we're going to jump in with 2 feet, and we're just going to make this happen. And I guess that again is the driving force behind me being involved kind of on a daily basis in both businesses. Is this is my livelihood, my bills, but it's my long-term livelihood. If and when I retire, that this was a decision I made to take the little nest egg, which wasn't a whole lot. I mean, it wasn't enough for me to survive for very long, but my nest egg, and I decided to put it into these 2 businesses. And so that's what motivates me on a daily basis is, hey, I got to pay my bill, pay my employees, I got to pay the bank, I got to pay for my lease. And at the end of the day, I want to get back what I put into it, if not more. And so that's the driving force. So there wasn't really a whole lot of, okay, how do I make this work so that I still have some left that I can use some. It was, okay, let's go. And so we went.
Well, and it sounds like such a big part of what you're doing, Scott, is you're in the business. Like you're creating the culture, you're driving it. Tell us a little bit about how you thought about the skills and experience you had gained over your 20 years in corporate America and how that played into your decision to buy the businesses that you did. Were you thinking about how your skills were going to translate in these particular models? What did you think your day-to-day was going to look like being a business owner?
Yeah, I think the skills and things that I used for those 20 years in corporate America, as well as my wife, she was in swim when she was young. She was a lifeguard. She taught swimming lessons. She was a synchronized swimmer. So that was a natural fit. She also, throughout her professional life, has been in customer service, which both of these franchises, if we don't take care of the families and we don't treat them right, they're going to go find somewhere else to get swimming lessons, or they're going to go find somewhere else to hit a baseball or a softball. And so having her background not only was very helpful. Those skills translated easily into what we're currently doing. My knowledge of sales and a little bit of marketing operations from being in different roles throughout my career and with the teams, I think play right. So it was an easy transition, and it made sense to us because we weren't doing it as a kind of an investment necessarily. I build my portfolio by having these different franchises. We were doing it as a career choice also. So this is what I've chosen to do. The last part of my professional career is run these businesses, and so it was an easy and natural thing right into the 2 that we chose.
Yeah. And what does your day-to-day look like now? And how consistent is that with what you were expecting?
My day-to-day is different every day. I have a plan, and it never goes to plan. So I have a list of things that I want to get done on a daily basis, and I might get 2 or 3 of them done, and then everything just happens. employees call out, something happens at the facility, just stuff happens. So the day to day is different. But at the end of the day, it's what do we do to what our instructors do to be better instructors? What did my staff do to treat people the right way and create a culture of excitement and learning at both businesses? Because that's what we do is kids come and learn how to hit a baseball or field a baseball or hit a softball or pitch a softball or swim or float. We're teaching people how to do things. And if we help people get better on a daily basis, that's a good day to day. As far as I like what I do now because I can go to work when I want to go to work. I can, if I want to sleep in, which I don't do a whole lot of, but sometimes I can work as late as I feel like I want to work. If my son has a baseball game, I don't have to go ask for time off. I just get to go if I want to attend a baseball game. I get to go to lunch with my wife almost on a daily basis, which we didn't get to do. So there's to me, there's so many benefits of my day to day that are better than what the corporate America. And corporate America is great. It provides jobs, and it provides stability. But for me, my life is better now than it was before.
Yeah. Tell us about working with your wife. And
Yeah, we
you intended to do that from the get-go, or you just kind of fell into that with the second franchise, and how's that been?
No, as a matter of fact, even before we did the franchising, we happened to be working for the same company. So we've worked together for a while. I would say the last 6 years, I guess. We've been at the same business for about that time, and a lot of people say that's crazy. How can you guys hang out now together that long, or whatever? And it's not like we didn't before this hang out all the time. We needed to go to Home Depot, we went to Home Depot. We needed to go grocery shopping, we both went grocery shopping. It's just the way we've been for 30 plus years of marriage. And she's my best friend, so how do you not enjoy working with her, right? So, sorry. It's great. I think a lot of people question how do you spend that much time together. And I'm not saying it's all roses. There are times where we are butting heads in the business.
Well, I'm interested to ask a follow-up question there, Scott, because you talked about the fact that you worked together for 6 years, but when you're telling the story of working in a business with your wife, you got a little choked up. So what has been different about working in the same company versus owning a business together?
I think it just goes back to this is what we chose to do, and she'll tell you I chose it, and she just got roped into it, which is really that's the honest truth. This is what we were going to do, and I've roped her in. That's that's the good part about it. We get to make decisions together. We get to talk about her point of view, also best for the involved. Each have sort of separate roles, but very few times do we make decisions where we don't at least have. What do you think about this? What if we try this? Should we have this person teach this class, or should we spend money on this marketing idea? And so to me, that's a huge benefit because we're aligned, I guess, in the fact that we're successful, but we're also trying to make it successful for us personally, so that we don't have to, spend hours on end at night like we used to. When we first started, we were up till 2, 3 in the morning because I was still working my full-time corporate job when we first started, and so I would work that job and I would come home and then work. Crazy. We don't do that anymore. some of the responsibilities with my wife is a good thing.
Yeah. So it sounds like keeping your corporate job was part of the plan of how you were going to make things work. So tell us a little bit about that. How long did you do it for, and how did you know when it was time to pull up and go all in with your time on the business?
Sure. So I did it for a year. From the time we started teaching our first swim lessons, I was still at my corporate job for 12 months. At that 12-month point is when DBAT started more attention because part of it was because my general contractor wasn't staying on top of things, so I actually had to start becoming a general contractor to make sure the construction got done. And so I kind of just said, I got to leave that all together, and I got to go over here and help run British Swim School, make sure that DVAT construction stays on pace so that we were supposed to open in October of 2023, and we didn't open until the very end of December of 2023. And so we lost some advantages of free rent and things like that during those months, which there's lots of reasons why that happened, which we don't need to go into, other than I decided I need to be more involved in the day-to-day, getting the building ready to go, making sure we were going to get open sooner than later. That's when I decided to leave my corporate job.
Got it. Okay, I just have a couple final questions for you, Scott. One is, in hindsight, looking back on it, what was one of the smartest things that you think you and your wife did as you approached becoming business owners?
I would say the smartest thing we did was choose something that we both were passionate about, that we both felt good about. We didn't just choose XYZ franchise or ABC franchise because we thought it looked good on paper. We chose and work on and enjoy.
And why has that been important for you?
Because otherwise it's just a job, or in some regards it might be just a headache. For us, it's I go back to the fact what I on a good Saturday we teach upwards of 150 to 200 lessons. It's how to save their life, and that's of value. Me selling you a trinket, which is what I did in the corporate world, is I sold people stuff that they probably didn't need, wasn't of value to me. Yes, it brought in revenue and it brought in income, but at the end of the day, I didn't necessarily go home and say, I'm fulfilled, I feel good. Now I can say that.
Got it. And also, as you look back with hindsight, what's one thing you would have done differently, knowing what you know today?
It's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be responsible for myself. I didn't want to rely on the hindsight. I would have tried to overcome that fear.
What were you afraid of? And knowing what you know today, how would you have overcome that fear?
I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of not being able to provide food, things that, 5 or whatever it is, and your paycheck just comes every 2 weeks because it just comes. Not that I was a slacker employee. I think I was a very hard-working corporate employee, but I was working very hard for somebody else, and thereupon my needs were being met. And my focus has changed a little bit, and now I just need my needs met. That's all I really want. To be able to pay my mortgage. I want to be able to put food on the table. I want to put gas in the car. And if there's a little bit left over at the end of the month, that's great. But so my focus has changed to what's important in life. And I can't remember the second part of your question, so I apologize. But that's kind of what I was thinking when you asked.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you had any insights on how you would, if you were talking to your 25-year-old self, what would you be telling him about how to get over that fear?
Jump in. Don't be afraid. Believe in yourself, maybe. And just be confident in what you're doing. And it surprises me that I'm sitting here saying this because I feel like I've always been a very confident person. I look back at my elementary and middle school and high school and college days. Confidence was never a problem. It's why was it in starting this? I don't know. Maybe because I was responsible for other people too. I was responsible for young children and my wife, and maybe that had something to do with the fear. I'm not sure.
Yeah, understandable. Well, Scott, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think you have some unique things here that people can take away from pursuing parallel paths with two different franchises, some of the insights of working with your spouse in the business. And my big takeaway from talking with you is that you've kind of flipped the script on what it means to invest in a business. Because for you, you have invested primarily in a sense of fulfillment and quality of life, such that the business returns for you are kind of like the icing on the cake, not the actual cake. And, I hear that occasionally, but not necessarily in the way that you just expressed it. So
no, that's a great way to look at it. That's the way I feel. Money on a month-to-month basis to pay, like I said, pay the bills and get paychecks everybody. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Create the Life You Want podcast. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to future episodes by clicking the subscribe button, you know where. If you're an aspiring business owner, you may also want to subscribe to the Create the Life You Want newsletter for more inspiration and tips delivered to your inbox every week. You can find the link to that in the show notes, as well as on my personal website, jeremyames.com. If you've already decided you want to start or buy a business, consider exploring your financing options by heading to our sponsor's website at www.guidantfinancial.com. That's GUIDANT financial.com. See you in the next episode.